I'm really excited today about this podcast. A lot of us in midlife are thinking about starting our own businesses, leaving the corporate world, and maybe turning a side hustle into something then more than a side hustle. So I decided to ask my friend, Michelle Burke, who is the owner of Health and Taxes, to talk to us about what are the steps we need to think about in starting our own business. Welcome, Michelle, to the new mid.
Thank you, Michelle. It's so exciting to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's a bit overwhelming to think, oh my gosh, if I want to, make my side hustle into more than just a side hustle, or I've got this great idea, there's a gap in the market. You had a similar thing happen to you. You pivoted from your corporate job and went into entrepreneurship. Do you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure, Michelle. First, I will say I just kind of stopped and started, and I don't necessarily recommend the cold start. And we'll talk about that as we go through this. But my story is I spent 15 years in public accounting, 15 years in corporate tax, and I just started to get burnt out. I started to feel like I was a number. I'm a CPA, I'm a tax accountant, I do numbers. I started feeling like corporations were treating people like numbers and not like people. And so I was getting a little bit lost and wasn't certain I was really meeting my life purpose. And so I decided I really needed to time out and just quit and start thinking about what is my life purpose. So leading up to when I quit was December 2019. Those are kind of things I was thinking about. And then in January 2020, if you would have asked me, hey, Michelle, you're a CPA, you're a tax accountant, is that what you're going to pivot to? Is that what you're going to do? Will you be doing that as your new business? I said, absolutely no way. I've had enough. I'm not doing that. But then life changed in 2020, and it actually turned out to be a great time for me to be rethinking, kind of reevaluating in my life, like a lot of other people. And then I started having people calling me saying, hey, I can't get a stimulus check. I said, have you filed your tax returns? No, they hadn't filed their tax returns. People were having trouble getting unemployment. And that's because they were either 1099 contractors or they had small businesses. And so they needed help with that. And other friends had lost their job and were thinking about starting a new job. So all these things made me realize people needed my help, my expertise to help them get going in 2020 with all the changes that were happening, and that with all my tax experience, I could help them, and especially the small entrepreneur or the startup entrepreneur. And so I really found that I wasn't willing to leave. I was willing to leave corporate taxes, but I wasn't willing to leave taxes because I had a lot to offer the entrepreneur.
And I have to say, I am very grateful because you are helping me with my taxes, because taxes are overwhelming and they change all the time, don't they?
Oh, yeah. And we had a lot of change going on during COVID and the last administration. And so there's always new things to keep up on. And it's just a lot, right? It's a lot for anyone, and especially someone who's starting up a business or in the middle of their business and really focusing on what it is they want their business to be. All those administrative things can get really overwhelming, but they can keep you up at night because the IRS may come knocking at your door, and we don't want that, right?
Exactly. So interesting that you were a CPA. Did you always love numbers? Is that something that just always kind of came to you?
Yeah, numbers have always been natural for me. So yeah, definitely.
Okay. Well, thank God, because they are not natural to me. So I am so grateful for people like you.
Many of my clients would say the same thing. And that's when I'm here to really help them get through that part and make it not so overwhelming.
Great. So let's help some of the women out there who are really thinking about this, like changing their side hustle into a little bit more, or retiring from one company and deciding, like, I'm going to use the skills that I have to start my own business, similar to what you've done. what is like, where do we start?
Sure. A lot of people think that they hear, I need to be an LLC. An LLC is a limited liability company, and it has great benefits and it's very flexible and it's a great way to get started. But I just wanted to pause people and just say, you don't have to be an LLC to get going, especially if you're doing something that you're not certain if it's really going to grow. You're not certain. You can start your business without that. But I do recommend, I'm not an attorney, I'll put that out there, but I do recommend if you have this idea, this big idea, sitting down with your CPA, sitting down with your attorney, talking through what your goals are, where do you see that business in 5 or 10 years, and deciding what the form of a business is. But I will say for many of us, a great place is to start with a limited liability company. It protects your individual assets from your business assets. And it starts forcing us to look at our business as a separate entity from ourselves and track our business expenses separate from our individual expenses. And it just makes it a little more legitimate. It does protect, add some layers of protection from your financial assets as your person or your married family. So it's a great way to start.
Well, what's interesting is it also, I talk to my clients about this. You need to show up as that business owner, as that CEO. So having your own LLC really makes you are the CEO of your company.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of all that is just the mindset, which is so important. And I know you do a lot of training with business owners or people thinking about business with a mindset. And it really is an important step, especially if you're going from employee to entrepreneur, because it's a very different world. And and you can get overwhelmed, and it's just best to just kind of take things slowly, go ahead and get started. You don't have to have all the answers, and just get started and do the pieces.
If you're like in an MLM, do you have to also have an LLC?
So the answer is no, you can do an MLM in your name. I do a couple different MLMs myself, and you can do them in your name. Again, it just becomes, and it's a great way, especially when you're starting out as an MLM, just do it in your own name and put it on a Schedule C on your individual return, where you can capture some of, like if you're going to conferences or you're buying product or some of the expenses, you're capturing those and your income, but you can do it in your own name. It's when you start getting bigger, start having a team, start seeing a vision of where you want to take it, that's a good time to become an LLC and a good time to look at other options.
Would you say, is there a gauge in finances coming in where you're kind of like, all right, at X amount of dollars, this is when you're kind of a little more serious and you should start thinking about it?
I would say, there's not a hard cutoff number. For me, someone starts earning 25,000, they should definitely start thinking about it, an LLC, because it's no longer just a hobby anymore. And then there's also a point, there's an S Corp, which is even a little bit more advanced. It starts offering benefits to people. It's a play on how much Social Security taxes you pay and how that goes. I usually don't recommend people go down that path until they're earning $75,000 to $100,000. So those are all, it's all facts and circumstances based, but it's just kind of maybe some good rules of thumb to be thinking about. And then, we're talking about MLMs, but if you're talking about someone has this great idea and someday they know they want investors coming in and they want their business idea and they want outside help to really grow it, that's when they might start thinking that a C Corp is the way to go, because a C Corp offers a lot of flexibility for investors to put money in. There's different types of shares, like a common share or preferred share. And so, but this is all, again, depends. It's best to sit down with someone and really talk through, what is your goal? Where do you want to take the company? Where do you see it? And I'll go back to saying, getting started and then becoming an LLC gives you so much flexibility, because an LLC can always elect to bring on more people and become a partnership. It can bring on more people and become an S corp. It can bring on more people, elect to be a C corp. So you have a lot of flexibility, and that's why you hear it being used quite a bit.
Well, putting on your CPA hat, or what do you think one of the biggest troubles spots are for new business owners?
What I find with new business owners, the biggest trouble spot is really what can get you in the most trouble is really separating your personal expenses from your business expenses. And so having that LLC, so once you set up, organize with the state as an LLC, then you get a EIN, which is a business number through the IRS, and then you would get a bank account, and then you would handle maybe a credit card or a debit card, but you'd start tracking and paying for all your expenses and bringing your income through your business, just keeping that separate. There can be crossover, but having really good books and records of, here's what I'm doing personally, here's what I'm doing on the business side, is so important to keep people out of trouble. And I'm not saying initially everybody's going to have struggles with that, and it takes a little while to get, but it's where the IRS will go and look to see if you're abusing things, if you have money going all over the place, and if you can't show them where did the money go, why. It may be a legitimate business reason that you paid out of your personal account because you forgot. That's okay. Just have a record of that. But it's that abuse that ends up getting you in trouble.
So there's different types of like QuickBooks and different electronic technical stuff that can help, right? Keep all of that separate.
Yeah. So a lot of business owners, because they're a one-woman band trying to do all the things, and especially when you're first starting out, there's all these different costs. Do I need to hire an accountant? Do I need to hire a bookkeeper? And the answer is no, you don't. You could buy some of those online programs and get started. I also offer a lot of my clients just a simple Excel worksheet. And it's just to trigger your mind, get you in the practice of just monthly or quarterly tracking your business expenses and getting in the habit of accounting for them, categorizing them. And it can be really simple. So you don't have to incur that cost. Once you get to once you start getting the routine of it, you will find that a lot of your expenses, they're reoccurring expenses. So some sort of subscription to maybe to your website or to Canva or to, Hootsuite or any number of these different softwares that we use. So it's just this routine expense. So once you categorize it, every month when it comes in, you know where it goes, or quarterly or annually, however frequent. So again, I wouldn't say people should get overwhelmed and worry about QuickBooks. QuickBooks is a great system because so many people use it and because they expand the system. But there are other ones out there. There's Wave, there's Quicken. There are other ones out there to get you started, because sometimes QuickBooks, there's so many bells and whistles, people get overwhelmed with that too, right? So I suggest just tracking your expenses on a simple spreadsheet to get going. And then at a point where you have more, maybe you have some admin help you, or you get a bookkeeper to help you.
Well, it's nice too, because then it automatically, has it there. Right. It's synced up to your bank account, so it will automatically show the different expenses. Because when you are a solopreneur, you have so many different things that you have to do. It's nice to have that part sort of taken care of. And when you start hiring people, do you have to set up a payroll system? How does that work?
Oh, so that's a really good question. So, first and foremost, just because we were talking about a bookkeeper, you could hire a service and just pay them as a vendor, as a contractor, to do your work. Now, if you are at a point where you actually want to hire an employee, there's quite a few steps in responsibilities with employee. There's Social Security, there's federal withholding, there's state withholding, there's state unemployment, federal unemployment. There's a lot of things to be thinking about in that equation, and whether you're going to provide benefits, whether you're going to provide health insurance, 401k, these things. So it starts, the cost started adding up, and there's a lot of things to be thinking about. But again, there are some systems that services that can help you with payroll. So even for me, I use a service for payroll, just because there's so many. That's one of the areas, again, where someone could trip up. There can be monthly filings, weekly filings. There's a lot of filings, and the state or federal government will keep on top of that, and you'll start getting notices, and that can be a little crazy. So, I'm thinking most of our listeners are at that phase where it's just them getting in the business, just them getting started, operating as an LLC. They actually wouldn't pay them, if a single member LLC, they wouldn't actually pay themselves a payroll. They will just take draws from their accounts.
Okay.
So it's a lot simpler.
And is it simple when you hire a contractor, not an actual employee?
Yeah, so contractor is easy because you just pay them you need to go through a legal contract, but you would pay them a certain fee by the hour or a certain amount that you've agreed upon. And so at the end of the year, you owe them a 1099. It's called non-employee compensation, a 1099 NEC. So one-time reporting of how much you've paid them. That's required if you pay them over $600 and they're operating as an LLC or an independent person. So there's a lot less compliance, a lot less tax forms you have to file, but one has to be really careful that they're not treating their contractor as an employee. So if you're telling your employee when to work, when to show up, what to do, if you're treating the person like an employee and you're the boss, you might get challenged on that. So a contractor is really someone who should be working independently. You hire them to do X, Y, or Z. They go and do it. They give you the end product. If that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, we are here in February, which we're quickly approaching tax season. I guess when you hit January, isn't it tax season? It really kind of is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So in filing taxes, what are some business owners should look out for tax returns?
Yeah, so as a business owner is filing their tax returns. So it's good if they, prior to the tax season, during the prior year, as we were talking about kind of keeping those books and records, ideally, you've done that leading up. If you haven't, that's fine. You can pull all your bank accounts, your credit cards, your PayPal, Stripe, whatever you're using. So just a quick point to our listeners is, once you're operating as that business, have that business name, have that LLC set up, make sure that your PayPal account, if that's where you want to bring in revenues, or your Stripe or whatever platform you're using, make sure it's in that business name. Because at the end of the year, you're going to get a 1099-K, which says, here's how much money you got paid during the year for things that you were selling to your clients or the business that you were doing. So it's really important to make sure that you're looking at that those things. So this year was the first year that PayPal, Stripe, all of those platforms were required to report to the IRS and report to you. And so a lot of people are like, hey, wait, I got this thing from PayPal this year and it's in my name. yes, we need to take a closer look at that. But back to your point, business expenses, you may be able to take a home office deduction, your website, all your different subscriptions, if you're going to conferences or Zoom trainings, buying books or materials to learn your business, to support your business, any type of advertising you're doing, a percent of your cell phone. If you have a personal cell phone you're using for business and personal, a lot of times people will take 50% of their cell phone expenses, business meals. There's lots and lots of expenses that you can expense in your business, as long as your intent is to run it as a profitable business. It doesn't have to be profitable, but your intent is to make money. And these expenses are supporting that business activity.
Is there any place you can go to sort of find a checklist of the kind of expenses that you could claim, that you could deduct?
Yeah. So I mean, the IRS.gov, if you go in there, they have, you might get overwhelmed, but there are all kinds. They have great publications on business deductions, home office expenses, vehicle expenses. They have lots and lots of publications that are really, really good sources of what is deductible. I like to help my clients out and provide them kind of my checklist of things they should be thinking about, to make sure that they're considering for their business. Because a lot of times they're like, oh yeah, I use my printer, I stock it with paper, some sort of office supplies that they're not thinking about, or, hundreds of different ideas. But
right. Well, if someone wanted to, could they reach out to you and, maybe they don't need to have everything, but you might be able to help them just a little bit think about their deductions?
Absolutely. You can reach out to me on my website at healthandtaxes.net. And just reach out to me through there. I'm happy to help you. I have a free discovery meeting, so I'm happy to talk to you for 30 minutes about your business and just understand where you are, where you want to take it, answer some of your questions. And so, I'm happy to answer any questions if people want to reach out to me that way.
Because going to those government sites, I don't know about you, but I get so overwhelmed. So it would be nice to just be able to call you, or if you have a resource for that. But I always ask my questions. I can't believe we're at the end of this conversation. It went by so quickly. It's so fascinating. But what advice would you give for a person who wants to take the plunge, but is really scared to take the first step?
Oh, wow. That's a great question, Michelle. So kind of circling back, if they're scared, and I wouldn't, if you have a full-time job and you're looking to change, I wouldn't just jump. I would start doing some of your business concept and start playing with it a little bit in your extra time. That would be my advice, so you don't freak yourself out. But really, one is start thinking about getting your mindset, getting that in the right place, right? Writing down, I would say the number one step is just writing down, and there's business plans, there's structured ways to do it, but I would just start writing down, what is it I want to do? What does it look like? Who would my customers be? What kind of competition's out there? How can I best service my clients? And just start laying out those ideas and making sure that you feel passionate about it and it's really what you want to do. And then I'm going to say, just start doing it. And then, you can always reach out to Michelle Newman here to help you through the mindset. I'm here to help you kind of structure it and just get things started. So there's a lot of great resources out there. I found during the pandemic, a lot of people are making that step. A lot of people were forced to. So some of us, people have lost their jobs and they're kind of forced to figure out what that next step is. And so, that's fine too. But I say, just start doing
I
it. Do what
know.
you feel passionate about.
It's so true. There's so much opportunity out there, and it's having the faith in yourself, knowing that if you take the leap, you really can accomplish a lot, and just getting your ducks in a row. And Michelle, this has been so informative and so great. And again, what is your website that people can, and it'll be in the show notes, but what is your website again?
Yes, my website is healthandtaxes.net. And feel free to check it out and jump on there and contact me through that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being on the New Mid.
Thank you for having me, Michelle. It was enjoyable.